So today we are talking about record-breaking numbers in terms of injuries in the Premier League. I mean, where do we start first then, Ben? Because it's month by month record-breaking stuff. It's year on year. What is the kind of numbers that have jumped out to you?
Yeah, so typically what we look at the first half of the season to give us a little bit of an understanding of the landscape of injuries during that first part. And of course, all of the talk from managers around this time of year is around, with regards to the tight schedule, it's injuries, it's muscle problems, it's hamstrings, and of course, it's COVID. And, and Jurgen Klopp and his merry men have been championing the cause about, the protection and the well-being of players. So this is a good way of just, maybe trying to cut through some of that hyperbole and just understand, well, actually, is what managers are talking about and clubs discussing and their concerns, is that, are there valid points that they're making in terms of the numbers? And from what we've seen on this season compared to the previous 5, then, they certainly have got a right to complain.
And so kind of looking at it then, December, we have seen an incredible amount of increase in hamstring injuries in terms of the kind of year-on-year data. And also December itself, injuries at a record level. And this is actually featured in the Times and the Mail. It has really been in vogue at the moment. A lot of people are talking about this. Do you want to talk about those month-by-month bits of data then that we have kind of found from looking through the archives?
Yeah, so typically just for overall injuries per se, they have topped 100, what we class as significant injuries for the first time in the last sort of 6 years. And what we mean by significant is a player misses at least one Premier League game and or that player is sidelined for 9 or more days. So, that tries to even the playing field. We're not talking about minor knocks and niggles. We're talking about time loss injuries here. And specifically, when we talk about hamstring problems, because again, they're very much in vogue, their numbers are, quite frankly, startling in terms of where we are. So from November to December, in terms of reported incidents for hamstring only, we've seen an increase in 142%. That's 142. Now, yes, we do normally see rises in between sort of November and December, but that's closer to 40 to 50%. So this is almost, it's over 3 times that figure. And the big concern, as typically when we head into January, those numbers continue to rise. We've also seen an increase in the 5-year average of hamstring injury by 50%. So we would normally see in the region of maybe 19, 20 significant hamstring problems. That's touching 29 now. So, it's plain to see that, again, the impact of COVID and the scheduling and everything else that you add into the mix is having a massive problem with, players and their ability to stay fully fit.
And this extends out over the year-long period as well, doesn't it, Ben? There's a lot of kind of data backing this up, that we're seeing record numbers in terms of year-long injury trends as well, because we've come to January, we've had the time to kind of look back on these data sets. And again, it's kind of shocking stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, massive. And I often get asked the question, what do you actually put this down to? And there's no simple answer to this. You can't pinpoint one specific issue. I suggest it's a little bit of it's a perfect storm of a lot of things coming together, over the culmination of the pandemic, heavily disrupted pre-season programs, squad lists where managers and coaches aren't able to rotate as freely as they could, players being risked, playing in that red zone, because there just aren't having alternatives. We obviously had the rollover from the European tournament in the summer, particularly for those players who were involved in the latter stages of that tournament, the Italians and the English players that come to mind. And then also, on top of that, you sprinkle COVID, and the whole thing is just, quite honestly, is a bit of a mess in terms of where we are. And, with regards to the injuries, if you've seen those articles, you'll see some of those highlighted numbers. But with regards to COVID, that we still got 100+ COVID cases reported this season. And I stress that's reported because we can't actually record those ones that haven't been officially confirmed by the club and by the player. And I would suspect that those figures are probably undercooked by at least 50, 60, maybe even 70%. So, again, that gives you some kind of indication of what these managers are having to deal with at this point in time.
And this is something that former Arsenal and England physio Gary Lewin has said as well. He said that this is an accumulative problem from the last 2 years. The last time any player did a full pre-season was probably 3 years ago. I mean, it's kind of baffling when you put it in a context like that. He and you are kind of on the front line here looking at this sort of stuff. And with the World Cup coming up next year as well, there's going to be a shortened time period between this season and next season. The problem's only going to get worse, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, look, it's incessant. It's non-stop. As it currently stands, there is a possibility that we could extend the season, maybe, but a lot of it's down to the money and those decision makers. We'll wait and see what happens. But the actual fact that the World Cup will happen in the winter, that will maybe afford a lot of players their first summer, for a number of years to maybe rest and recuperate and maybe prepare themselves, because it's going to be a big year ahead. And difficult to manage because, I think there's only something like a 7 to 10 day period either side of that tournament in Qatar for players to get out there, prepare, and then ultimately return, and then before they're straight back into domestic action.
But even with that, summer that is going to be sacrosanct, that they're not going to be doing a lot of things, it's still going to be shortened, isn't it? It's not going to be the usual pre-season period that we see. So kind of adding to Gary Lewin, it's going to be maybe 4 or even 5 years till these players have a proper rest, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the times when players were ultimately just switched off completely in the close season and went off and done their own thing, and then they came back to the club and they had a solid 4, 5, 6 week training period. Ultimately those have gone now. We've heard from managers such as Ralph Hasenhüttl in the past, where they give them an off-season conditioning program, and what they ultimately aim to achieve is they want those players to come in and hit the ground running in terms of their fitness, so they can maybe focus more on the technical or the tactical aspect of their football and get ready for the campaign. So, being a footballer at the elite level at this time, it really is a full-time job in terms of 365 days a year. A lot of these players will be working throughout the summer. They will go on warm summer training camps with their personal trainers. So yeah, they will be looking to maintain those fitness levels, but of course they're out of that really competitive environment. So physically, they can attune those levels, but also psychologically, they'll have that opportunity to maybe take a step back and rest, and maybe just think about just chilling and cutting off from the game for a little bit.
And so maybe the final question is, a lot of people say, oh, these players are paid a lot. As you said there, they're used to this schedule now where they're not really off ever during their career. They might have a week or two here and there where they can rest, go on holiday, but realistically, they have to stay in a conditioned shape all year round. So why is this rest period so important? Why is them not getting a prolonged period of rest? Why is them not getting a pre-season? Biomechanically speaking, what effect does that have on the body?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've used the analogy a lot of times before in terms of fatigue and that accumulation of fatigue. And if you don't have that appropriate sort of rest period, that opportunity to take a step back and recover, it's the fatigue that ultimately will poses as a massive risk in terms of injury incidents. And we use the analogy of having the bucket under the tap and that constantly dripping. Ultimately, can you play with it? Will you get through? Yeah, you will during that initial phase, but the water will overflow at some point. And that's when you tend to see players breaking down, particularly November's, December's, January. When you come into that mid part of the campaign, we've had a lot of league matches, we've had domestic cup duty, we've had European competition, and then we've also had the international fixtures where we've often seen 3 international fixtures shoehorned into that break now, as opposed to the past where it was 2. So, that's why it is important, like I say, just to take a step away from that competitive environment and allow yourself to recalibrate, refocus, re-energize, and, and then just look ahead and, just away from it all, because doesn't matter what job you're doing, at what level, and it doesn't matter how much you're paid, you all benefit from stepping away. We all need that change of scenery just to refresh every now and again.
And just for people to refresh in terms of us talking about the topic, we do have actually a dedicated fatigue video that we did with Raj from 3CV Performance. He is our resident doctor here, hailing from the sunny shores of LA, but he gives a ray of sunshine to the shows that he produces with us as well. Some fantastic insights in there. So I do recommend checking out that video as well if you are interested. But in terms of it, that is the end of today's video. Just a really deep data insight into record levels of injuries in terms of hamstrings, but in terms of year-on-year injuries as well. Fascinating stuff. It will bring more discussions about our players overplayed to the fore, I am sure. It's going to be talked about by managers and players alike. But for now, we're going to say we hope that you have a happy and restful period between now and the next Premier League games, and we wish you the best of luck and the best of health. But goodbye for now.